All right. So, Noah's Ark. We all think we know the story, right? The giant boat, two of every animal, the massive flood. I mean, it's a story you hear from childhood. But what if all of that is just the tip of the iceberg?
And what if the real key to the whole thing isn't the ark or the animals, but a number? Specifically the number 8. Yeah, 8. Our source material for this explainer suggests that this one number, it changes everything. It unlocks this deep lesson about faith, about what it means to be a witness, and maybe most importantly, how we define success.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go beyond the ark, beyond the flannel graph images. We're diving deep into the text to figure out why on earth Noah is called the 8th person and what that tells us about what faith is really all about.
Okay, so this whole 8th person thing, it's not like Enoch, who was called the 7th from Adam, like a family tree thing. No, this is a head count. A stark, brutal head count. Out of the entire population of the planet, only 8 people made it through. 8. So right away, that title reframes the whole story. It's suddenly not a story about a cool boat. It's a story about a tiny, tiny group of survivors and an absolutely massive judgment.
But to really get why Noah's faith was so special, the source we're looking at says we can't just look at him in isolation. It's like he's the final step in a sequence, a kind of divine progression.
Yeah, the source lays out this super specific order, almost like a roadmap for a life of faith. And the stages, well, they are not interchangeable.
It starts with Abel. His story is all about making peace with God. That's step 1. Then you get to Enoch, who represents walking with God. Step 2. And only then, only after you have peace with him and you're walking with him, can you get to step 3, witnessing for God. That was Noah's job. And the source is crystal clear on this. You can't mix up the order. I mean, how can you witness for a God you aren't walking with? And how can you walk with a God you haven't made peace with? See? It has to be in that order.
So, okay, that was Noah's job, but what kind of world was he witnessing to? To really appreciate his faith, you have to get your head around the kind of darkness he was facing every single day. We're not just talking about a world with some bad people in it. We're talking about a world so twisted, so fundamentally broken, that the only solution was a hard reset on all of creation.
And where did this corruption come from? Well, the text traces it back to something supernatural. You have these angelic beings called the sons of God who basically abandoned their post. They left their proper home, their heavenly station, and committed this unique sin that crossed a boundary that was never meant to be crossed and messed directly with humanity. And the result of this unholy union, a hybrid race known as the Nephilim. The name itself literally means the fallen ones. And these weren't just tall guys. They were giants, sure, but they were also giants in wickedness. Their very existence was a perversion, a corruption of God's natural order.
And this wasn't just some isolated problem in one corner of the world. It was total, absolute. The source points us to Genesis to show just how far it went. The quote says, "All flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth." All flesh. That's everything. The human race, the animal kingdom, it was all tainted.
Which brings up a huge question. Why Noah's family? Why them? Well, the Bible calls Noah perfect, but that word can be a little misleading. The source here dives into the original Hebrew, the word tamim, and that's the same word used to describe a sacrificial animal as being without blemish. So it's not saying he was morally flawless, that he never sinned. It's saying his family line, his genetics, were pure, uncorrupted by all that Nephilim business. They were, in a very real sense, the last pure branch of humanity left. Okay, so picture this. You've got this unbelievably dark, corrupt, and frankly bizarre world, and in the middle of it all, Noah gets a command from God. And this is where his faith just goes to a whole other level. Because his faith wasn't based on anything he could see or prove. It was based entirely on a warning about something that had literally never happened before. Just try to put yourself in his shoes for a second. A flood that covers the entire world? There was no precedent for that. There weren't storm clouds on the horizon. There was no scientific data. He was, as the text says, divinely instructed about something that had zero physical evidence. I mean, everything around him was screaming business as usual, and meanwhile, he has this voice in his head saying, nope, it's all about to end. And his response? He didn't just talk about it. No. For more than 100 years, his sermon wasn't preached with words, it was built with wood. Day in, day out, this slow, steady, relentless act of building a gigantic boat on dry land. Can you imagine? Every single swing of the hammer was a sermon. Every saw cut was a declaration of his faith.
You know, it's interesting. Our source draws this really sharp contrast between Noah and Lot down in Sodom. See, Lot used his words. He warned his family, but they just laughed at him. Why? Because his life was all tangled up with the city. He was a ruler there. His actions totally contradicted his words. But Noah lived apart. His action, that crazy ark, was his witness. It was his consistent, separate life of obedience that served as the real condemnation of the world around him.
Now, to be fair, the New Testament does call Noah a preacher, but we have to be careful with that word. The Greek word used is kerux. A kerux isn't an evangelist trying to win converts with a message of hope. A kerux is more like a herald, a town crier. They make a formal, official proclamation that isn't up for debate. So Noah wasn't going around offering a second chance. He was heralding one simple fact: judgment is coming.
All right, so let's put all the pieces together here. We've got a guy who followed this step-by-step progression of faith. He stood alone in this completely corrupt world, and he acted on a warning about something he couldn't see. But what was the result? After all that, what's the big takeaway?
And this is where it gets kind of uncomfortable for us today. Because let's be honest, we are obsessed with results, with metrics, with growth. So, judging by our modern standards, after 120 years of work, was Noah a success?
Let's look at the numbers. The result of more than a century of work, of building, of being a living sermon? 8. 8 people. Just his own immediate family. That's it. If you put that on a spreadsheet today, that doesn't look like success at all.
And right there, that's the whole point. This is the profound conclusion our source draws. The story of Noah completely flips our definition of success on its head. It moves the goalposts. In our witness for God, in our work, in everything we do, the number one requirement isn't success. It's faithfulness. Let me say that again because it's so important. The takeaway is this: we have nothing to do with the results. That part is in God's hands. Our only job, our one and only responsibility, is to be faithful. The source really hammers this home by tweaking a famous line from a parable. Think about it. At the end of it all, the words we want to hear aren't, "Well done, good and successful servant." The words are, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's it. That's the only metric that will ever matter.
So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. In a world that is completely obsessed with results, in our careers, our social media, our lives, where everything is measured by what people can see, what would it actually look like to let go of all that pressure? What does it really mean for you right now to just be faithful?